The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, it's to act with yesterday's logic. And that's a quote by Peter Drucker, and I think it's really fitting from an ESG perspective, because ESG is really around framing and building your business for the future, not looking backwards at what we've always done. Today I'm going to share with you what is ESG, some of the complexities around ESG globally, some of the practical things farmers can do, and then some opportunities that I think sit within ESG. Before I go any further, I just wanted to do a really genuine and authentic thank you to both Nuffield Australia as well as AgriFutures. I was at a time in my life when I was floating along and lost a little bit of confidence, and the Nuffield experience and the investment in me has really come at a crucial time, and I really feel set up now to take on the next challenges. And a couple of examples of how Nuffield has really helped me already is I'm living my best life as an ESG advisor for a big pastoral company up in the Kimberley region. So that's on my soul country and just makes me really happy. So Yugawalla Pastoral Company is amazing. And also when I was interviewing a guy for my Nuffield, that conversation ended up in me pulling a Mongolian piece of work with the Asian Development Bank, where I'm going to be writing them a livestock strategy in the face of changing climate. So two massively fun pieces of work that I get to do as a direct result of my Nuffield Scholarship. Thank you also to my GFP. I was really looking to be surrounded by really smart people that question my thinking, and I think that's the biggest gift that Nuffield gives, is that we have judgments and we have assumptions in life, and to have those challenged is a really healthy thing. So what is ESG? Basically, ESG stands for environmental, social and governance. And really, when you break it down, it's how can I run a business within a complex system that is still here for generations to come. So it's a framing that helps you identify key sort of levers within your business to make sure that you're still there. So the E stands for environment. And that pertains to things like greenhouse gas emissions, soil health, water quality, water use efficiency, natural capital, and all of those sorts of things, which are really important for the long-term sustainability of your business. The S stands for social, and that's different when you look at developing countries versus developed countries. So in developed countries, it's things like how do you treat your staff? What team culture have you got? Are you meeting all of your workplace health and safety obligations? Are you contributing to your community? Have you got good animal welfare practices? So your S pertains to people and animals. In the developing world, it's slightly different. So S pertains to things like food security, access to education, access to health, and those sorts of things that really impact humanity. The G stands or represents how, like, what business systems have you got? So what structures have you got? Have you got a board in your farming organisation? How are you making decisions? How are you managing your finances? What is your risk appetite look, and how are you managing that? So you can see that ESG together really gives you a solid foundation for running a business in future. So what are the key drivers of ESG? Really largely it's shareholders who are demanding more from companies they invest in. It's also politicians who like to be elected by saying populist things to get themselves re-elected. So they're really short-term sort of mindsets, and we're trying to manage an existential challenge, which is a transitional piece which requires longer-term systems thinking, and that's what ESG framing really gives us capacity to do. So speaking of drivers, check out this slide, look at me go, that's what's that thing, ChatGPT at work. And what this slide really illustrates is the fact that governance is the foundation of ESG. And what I mean by that is if you don't have solid business systems or solid governance, you can't actually look after your people or your environment. So when we look at orders of priority, your governance piece comes first. The African continent, as a representative, is largely focused on governance. If we move to the S side of things, once you've got your governance sorted, you can then afford to start looking after your people. And if I could typecast generally that, it would be Asia. So Asia has largely got their governance sort of system, and I'm generalising massively to try and demonstrate this, but Asia largely has their social system sorted, their governance system. They've got corruption, they call it out. I used to work in Indonesia and they'd be like, yeah, that's a 20% corruption tax, Maz. I'm like, yeah, ripper, like I know where I stand. So they've got that sorted, they're focused on the social side of things. And the E side of things, or the environment, is the biggest car, because that's really all we hear in Australia, because we are very privileged. We have got systems that really look after the governance and the social side of things with laws and standards of living and money. So we are really largely focused on environment, which is a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to focus on the environment. The EU, for example, is really pushing the environmental agenda. They cleared their land 2,000 years ago. And so they can now espouse that everybody else ought to be doing things, but that comes from a very privileged position. So I'll talk now a little bit about some of the challenges or the complexities with the global ESG piece. So consistency. There's no consistency around definitions of what people are expecting with things like net zero, carbon neutral. There's also no defined methodology of how you would measure it. There's no pathways really to achieve it from a trade and market access perspective that's consistent globally. So there's a lot of challenges with the consistency piece. Then there's the global inconvenience of food security and the fact that most of our major markets don't have it. And so while we are focused on the environment, they are focused on having enough tucker to eat. And so while ever there's really good producers in the room, in the short term, there will be a market for food. So there'll be a market for everybody, because no government in their right mind is going to bring in a policy like, you know, we can't trade with you unless you've got carbon neutral grain or beef or whatever, for example, because their own people will go hungry. So while ever we've got global food insecurity, we've got that complexity around we wanting to do better because there's an existential challenge around resource use and everything, but we don't really need to because somebody will always buy our product. We've then got the business systems. So business systems, or capitalist systems, if you like, are focused on short-term profitability when really the ESG piece is making sure that we've got a business over the longer term. And this was really interesting because I came across a large agribusiness manufacturer who was doing all the right things from an ESG perspective. So they had a goal of reducing their Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 70%, their Scope 3 emissions, which pertains to farmers, by 40%, and they are investing millions of dollars directly with farmers on practice change and bringing in innovation to reduce your carbon emissions and improve your soil quality. And I was like, man, this is a unicorn company. Holy moly, they're actually putting their money where their mouth is. They're actually paying for, you know, some of the ESG credentials that they're claiming. And I said to them the obvious question, so obviously you're preferentially buying from those farmers that are, you know, bringing in innovative practices and reducing their emissions and improving their soil quality. And he's like, what? Oh God, absolutely not. We've got a supply chain. We've got people in factories that need jobs. We've got logistics supply chains. We just need product. We can't yet afford to be fussy. And so I think in that we have time. Don't ignore the signals, they are there, but I think we've got time to think more wholly about the systems we're operating in. And the fourth complexity that we've got is advocacy, and I'm not going to go on too much because we've got the delicious Laura who's speaking on that in her entire topic. But what I wanted to just draw your attention to is the how we are represented internationally, or how we're portrayed internationally when we're advocating for certain things. So I was in Japan and went to a few spinning mills, and they all said to me, we preferentially buy wool from South Africa or New Zealand because they don't mules. And you guys steal mules, and it's an admin burden we don't really need to deal with. So inadvertently, the advocacy in Australia is being seen internationally, and unintentionally is affecting our trade and, you know, terms of trade, or whatever, you know, work with me, that word, whatever I'm thinking of. So what can farmers do now? So the first thing that I'd love for you to think about is what's important to your family business, because ESG largely has been seen as an external thing that's done to people. So how do we actually, what's important to your business, and can you collect data around that? So for example, if you're looking at, you know, getting rid of the need for dehorning in your stock, can you collect data on the animals that you're dehorning and not, and then spay or cull those heifers so that you're starting to breed it out? Work with your financial institutions and find out what is it the data that they need. Because they are able to help you, but they're also going to give you clarity around what data you're going to need for their reporting. Markets. Find out what your market needs, both now and in the future, because it might be that it doesn't suit your business or you need to find an alternate market. But if you can do that, you'll set yourself up for success. Use the data that you're collecting. Hello, Michael Taylor. Look at you go. Fellow 24 Nuffield scholar. So you're all collecting heaps of data. How are you using it? So I'd ask you that question. Then benchmarking. So benchmark your own business year on year, but there's also sustainability frameworks coming out that are benchmarking the national average. When I spoke to a grain farmer as part of the Grain Sustainability Framework consultation, he said to me, "But Maz, I'm heaps better than the national average." And I was like, "Great, prove it and be proud of it. That's wonderful." And then the third thing is to be proactive, because being proactive and sharing what you're doing, particularly around carbon emissions with the ag and land sector plan that's come out, means that there's less chance of the government putting things onto you with carbon reduction mandates if you're proactively sharing and showcasing that you're changing things. Oh shit, oh, sorry, oh my God. Sorry. So some of the opportunities that ESG brings, oh gosh, look at me go, I've now got in a panic, is one that you can get reduction in interest rates and insurance if you're running a good business, because if you're on your data and you've got strategies to protect things over the longer term, you're less risk. It gives you, oh shit, I've done it, oh my God. Sorry, it gives you an opportunity to be proud of what you're doing, because you're all doing amazing things, and an ESG framework and way of thinking enables you to showcase that. It gives you access to carbon and natural capital markets. In Australia, that's a bit fruity at the moment, but it's coming, and the earlier you can get organised for that, the better you'll be. It enables you to make proactive decisions, which is, and understand where the decision-making junctures are in your business to set you up for profitability and sustainability over the longer term, and it will enable you to keep your family farm for generations to come. Oh, that's great. I made it. So, I think, like overall, when I spoke to Richard Norton, he said to me, you know, Maz, ESG won't sell to farmers, but profitability does. And I guess my key message is that ESG is just a framing to help you think about your business and manage it so that it is long-standing. And I know with all of you lot in this room, Australian ag is really well placed to lead it into the future. Thank you. Sorry.